LCD screens on CPU coolers and PC cases have become ever more popular recently, but this new case from MSI has the most feature-rich LCD screen that I've seen to date. The MSI MEG Prospect 700R is a large mid-tower ATX chassis with enough space to house the latest graphics cards, eATX motherboards and huge cooling options. It also features a front-mounted 4.3-inch touchscreen LCD panel that can display system information, control fan speed, RGB lighting effects and integrates with MSI Center. But does all this high-tech gadgetry make it a good case? Let's find out. MSI is not a name that I would associate with cases. When looking to buy a new case, I'd be thinking maybe Fractal, Fantex, Deepcool perhaps, or even Corsair these days. But apparently MSI makes high-spec gaming cases, and we have one of those for review today. This is the MSI MEG Prospect 700R, a bit of a mouthful that, but it is a true high-spec case for gamers. It is currently available to purchase, so you can pick this up from places like OC UK, but it's priced at just under £350, which is a lot of money for a case. I know we had the Be Quiet Dark Base Pro 901 recently. That was around £320, but this tops that with a price tag of £349.99 if you're picking it up from somewhere like OC UK, which sounds extremely expensive, but it has got some high-tech gadgets included. One of those is the touchscreen LCD panel on the front of the case. So it is equipped with a 4.3-inch touchscreen LCD panel. It has a 480 by 800 resolution, and on here, unlike normal LCD panels where you can usually display system information and, you know, mess around with different images and stuff, there's a lot of features integrated into this LCD panel. So you can adjust fan speed of the fans inside the case. You can adjust the RGB lighting effects all on the touch panel. You can also integrate it with MSI Center software. You can bring up things like weather reports on here. Or instead of using the touch panel to change the fan speed and the RGB lighting, you can switch that over to the MSI Center software and control it by the motherboard. There's other things you can do as well. It will be interesting to take a look at that and see how it works with an MSI motherboard. The case has a lot of other features as well as the LCD panel. You can see it is a large mid-tower chassis, unlike the Be Quiet Dark Base Pro 901, which was a full tower. This is technically a mid-tower. It does look quite large to look at it on the desk, but it's actually more like the dimensions of something like a Corsair 5000D rather than the Dark Base Pro 901. These kind of triangular panels make it look a bit more bulky than it actually is. It does look like a really large case, but dimensions are more like something like the Corsair 5000D. It comes equipped with 440mm PWM MSI ARGB fans, so there's 4 fans pre-installed, 3 in the front panel, and then 1 at the back of the case, 140mm. It also has a modular interior that allows users to alter the system according to their specific needs. The interior is spacious. It has dedicated cable routing channels, and these side panels are hinged for improved access. It's equipped with magnetic dust filters at the front, the top, the side panel, and on the floor of the case. It also allows for extensive cooling options, such as the installation of multiple large radiators. Up to 10 120mm fans can be installed in the case, and also for enthusiasts of custom water cooling, you can buy a specific EK distro plate that fits on the side mount. In terms of front panel I/O connectivity, as well as the 4.3-inch touchscreen LCD on the front of the case, at the top you have 2 USB 3.2 Gen 1 Type A ports, 1 USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type C port, 2 3.5mm audio jacks. Power and reset buttons are up there as well. One thing I want to just mention about that front I/O connectivity is I would have liked to have seen a couple more USB Type A ports up there. Other cases in this price range have 4 USB ports up there. 2 is a little bit tight for me for this price range. So because the case is based on a modular design, you can remove panels, change panels, there's quite a lot to talk about with the case, so please excuse me if I don't get everything straight away in the video. If I miss something out, let me know in the comment section and I'll answer any of your questions. Also, don't forget, there is a full written review over on the Kit Guru website to go along with the video. So if there's anything I've missed on here, or if you want to see a full spec list and some of the features, make sure you head over to kitguru.net and you should be able to see everything you need to know about the case over on the website. So let's start taking some panels off and take a look at this case and see what you can actually do with it. So the side panels are hinged. They hinge nicely. They're quite a smooth action on the hinges. You can see on the front of both of these side panels, you've got these brushed aluminium triangular panel design. It gives the case a bit of like a wide stance from the front, makes it look quite bulky. You've got the MEG logo down at the bottom there in gold, and I say these hinge and just remove. There's a slight tint to the panel, but nothing major. So once you've got the side panel off, you can also remove the top as well. That just pushes off. There's these like push pins on the four corners. The panel just pushes off. You can see it is a heavily perforated metal panel there, and it is just made out of steel. That top panel has got some weight to it, so it's made out of some nice thick steel, and the powder coated finish looks really nice on that as well. Up here there's also a dust filter, and that just pulls out as well, so it does have a couple of magnets to hold it in place, and it locates at the front of the case there, and it removes easily for cleaning. So with the top panel off, you can get access up to this top radiator stroke fan mount. On here you can install up to 320 or 340 millimeter fans, or you can install up to a 360 millimeter radiator. So that obviously also includes a 120 and a 240. I think a 280 can also be installed at the top. No 420 millimeter support, which is a bit of a shame. Front of the case, you can see perforated metal section there, so it's like, you know, a mesh front panel in effect. So high airflow you should have from the front, and airflow out of the top as well through both the ventilated panels. Before you can remove that front panel, you actually need to take the other side panel off. Again, that is just on hinges. It has the same brushed aluminium panel on the side with the MSI logo in gold. You can also see down here, there's another dust filter, which is removable. And you've got a side vent there. We'll take a look at what that side vent's for soon. Once you've removed both side panels, you can then remove the front panel. So you just unclip that from the top. And again, that is made out of the same mild steel, it looks like, with powder coated finish. And it's got a large perforated metal mesh front intake there, and then behind that there also is another dust filter, again held in place with magnets and a couple of little locating pins at the bottom. Again, that's easily removable. And then at the front of the case you have the three MSI 140mm ARGB fans. They come connected up to a hub, which we'll look at as well. These fans and the one in the rear can be controlled by the touch panel or by the MSI sensor software. This front radiator stroke fan bracket, that can also be removed. There's various screws to take out. The panel will be able to be removed from the case, and you can install a radiator, fans, whatever on the bench, pop that in place. Again, probably makes installation a little more easy. Inside the main compartment you can install up to an eATX motherboard. Obviously that also includes standard ATX, micro ATX and mini ATX. To install an eATX motherboard though, you have to change the configuration slightly. So this panel here, which is kind of a cable management, cable hiding panel at the moment, this can be removed for another panel, and you pop that in place and then you can install an eATX motherboard. Alternatively, you can remove this panel and install another fan stroke radiator bracket, and on there you can install either up to 320mm fans or up to a 360mm radiator. If you do want to install an eATX motherboard and install the eATX panel, you can't install any fans or radiators there. You can't have the eATX panel and the fan bracket there at the same time. It's either one or the other. Maximum graphics card length in this case is 400mm long, so that's enough space for any graphics card I can think of on the market at the moment. Maximum CPU cooler height is 185mm tall, so even the tallest Noctua or Deep Cool Assassin coolers, anything like that, should be able to fit inside the case without any problems. The back of the case, there's 7 PCIe slots. You can remove all these PCIe slots individually, so take out all the PCIe slot covers, and you can replace that with a vertical GPU mount, which comes with the case. So that is included in the price and comes with the Prospect 700R. There's also a full length power supply shroud. It does have a cutout at the front there to allow a radiator to slot down. You can see the power supply shroud is in 2 sections. The back section, that is steel, and then this front section is made out of plastic. These can both be removed individually. There is a difference, or a slight difference, in colour between the black plastic and the black powder coated steel, which I don't know whether it's intentional or not, because this black here does match this panel pretty well, so I'm not sure whether that's intentional. I think I would have probably preferred it to be continuous in the same colour, just to continue the aesthetics better. I think would have looked better all been steel. There is also an MSI logo on here that is kind of embossed in the steel, then a cutout for window for your power supply to be able to see a logo on your power supply. I'm not really a fan of those cutouts on the power supply shrouds. I think the only one that looks good is that Asus power supply that has kind of a LCD display on. Anything else, I find that a bit pointless, to be fair. On top of the power supply shroud, there's 3 cutouts, all with rubber grommets in. There's more cable cutouts down the side of the motherboard tray, a couple more up at the top, and they all have rubber grommets fitted, which is good. At the back of the case, there's a large vent at the top, another vent for the 120 or 140 millimeter fan mount, your rear I/O cutout for the motherboard, 7 PCIe slots as I mentioned. There's a big vent as well down the side here, so if you do install your graphics card vertically, you might get a bit of airflow in through the back there, but it's not filtered, so you also might get some dust coming in through there as well. At the bottom as well here is the power supply mount, so it's one of those that you unscrew the thumb screws, bolt your power supply to that, push the power supply in, and then you can just screw the whole bracket back in position. So that should probably make the power supply installation a bit easier, and it will probably come in handy, that, because to me there doesn't look like there's a lot of space down here to work with getting the power supply in and the power supply cables. But as I said, the power supply shroud at the front, it can all be dismantled and removed, which I think you'll need that because there's only this small area to work with really, which might be a bit tight, especially if you have a big power supply going in there. There's quite a bit going on actually around this side of the case. So we'll start from the top. You can see up here is the fan stroke RGB hub. This has various ports on this fan hub. These first 3 fans are plugged in are the front fans. That is port A, and then there's port B, C and D, and they can all be configured and controlled individually on the front panel touchscreen. Obviously got all the ports for the RGB light in there. Looks like there's some good provisions for cable management in this case as well. You've got these channels, so there's one running down the center of the motherboard tray there with these Velcro straps that hold all the cables in. You've got another one that runs down this side for the EPS cables. Maybe you want to run some fan cables down there as well. And down here is where you can interchange those panels. So there's various screws down the side here. You can unscrew those, remove this panel, put in the fan stroke radiator bracket. You can swap it for the E80X panel, or you can even put in a separate panel that covers all of this, so it could potentially hide all your cables behind that cable management panel. In terms of storage, there's not a huge amount of 2.5 and 3.5 inch drive bays. Maybe MSI could have included some kind of storage panel here that you could have swapped out, but instead there's just a mount here for 2.5 inch drives. You can fit 2 2.5 inch drives on there. It's held in place with just a single thumb screw. Screw your drives to that, and then you can pop that panel back on. It just locates at the bottom and then is held in place with the thumb screw. You do have 2 more drive bays down here, quick release drive bays. Just slide in and out. These are made out of plastic. Screw your 2.5 or 3.5 inch drives there and slide them back in position. This drive bay can be removed completely. Maybe if you want to run a long radiator, you're going to have to slide it down there and it would interfere with that, so you probably have to remove that anyway. And also, if you want to install a power supply up to 220 millimeters long, you do have to remove that drive bay anyway. So it is a bit restricted, that drive bay, by the sounds of things, but it's there if you need it, and if you're not running a massive power supply or a large radiator at the front of the case. Not so much going on at the bottom of the case. There are some pretty large feet actually made out of plastic. These are about 35 millimeters perhaps, and they have some big anti-vibration rubber blocks. You can see there's a large dust filter as well that covers all the bottom of the case, and you just slide that out from the back. That's another woven nylon with some magnets on that as well. So again, like the other dust filters, nice and easy to remove for cleaning. There's a couple of vents towards the front of the case. I'm not sure exactly what their purpose is, maybe just for a bit of airflow into the drive bays, maybe perhaps some of the airflow for when you've got the side radiator fan mounts on, and also a larger cutout at the back for the power supply fan. So hopefully that's all the main features of the case covered. As I say, if I've missed anything out, let me know in the comment section, ask me a question and I'll do my best to answer it. I'll look at the features of that touchscreen display later, because you have to have it connected up to the motherboard for the full features to come up there, and we'll take a look at that once the system's been installed. It's a really high-end build to match the case. So CPU is an Intel Core i9 13900 case. Motherboard is this MSI MEG Z790 Ace high-end Intel current gen platform. For memory, it's a new memory kit that I'm using for the first time. So it's the G-Skill Trident Z5 RGB 2x16GB kit, so 32 gigabytes in total, and it's DDR5 6400 mega transfers per second. For graphics, it's an NVIDIA RTX 4080 MSI Gaming X Trio. Decent sized graphics card, should test out the capabilities of the case pretty well. For storage, I'm just using a single M.2 drive, so this is the Seagate Firecuda 530. It's a 2TB capacity, PCIe Gen 4 M.2 NVMe SSD. CPU cooler is the MSI MEG Core Liquid S360, so this is a 360mm all-in-one liquid cooler. It has its own LCD panel. I'm not sure how that's going to work with the MSI center and the panel on the case, but we'll soon find out. For the power supply, I'm probably pushing the case to its limit, because I'm going to use this new Seasonic Prime TX 1600. So this is a 1600 watt ATX 3.0 PCIe 5.0 1600 watt 80 plus titanium. It's possibly Seasonic's flagship prime power supply, but it's big. I think it's 210mm long, which is almost at the limit of what the specs say for the case. Let's get this high-end system together inside the case, see how easy or how difficult it is to install in this case, and see how it turns out. So the system's all built up, everything's up and running, and it's all working as it should be, which is always good news. In terms of the build, it was pretty straightforward. It's quite an easy case to build inside. You've got a lot of space inside the case to work with, so building a high-end system with a big graphics card in here is pretty simple. The only minor thing really with the build is the side panel, getting that back in position after you've managed cables. It's a bit awkward just maneuvering it into position around the cables, and you have to remove that side panel to be able to remove the power supply shroud, which you have to remove really for cable management, because around the other side at the back there isn't much space really to feed cables through. It's also a little bit awkward as well, feeding the cables into the cutout on top of the power supply shroud when you're putting it all back together. If you don't have much length on the cables, it is quite awkward getting them through into position, but that's kind of something you expect with these removable power supply shroud designs. But I would have liked a bit more space around the other side to be able to make that a little bit easier. Other than that, there was no major issue with installing the system as you can see it now, but I did try to install the vertical GPU mount, and I really struggled with this card. There doesn't seem to be enough space, or the way the mount is designed, there doesn't seem to be the space to be able to fit this card vertically with this motherboard inside the case using the standard vertical mount that comes with the case, because because of the 4080 is quite a tall card. It actually fouls on the shroud around the rear I/O, and you just can't get it into position. I don't think there's a way to adjust the vertical mount to allow for that. If there is, it wasn't very simple. I wasn't able to work it out myself. And because of that problem of me trying to get it in there, I actually did some damage to the riser cable. I put a scratch on top of the power supply shroud, and also the backplate was scratched a little as well, trying to get it in position. So it doesn't seem like this card is supported for vertical mounting inside this case, which seems a bit odd with everything being MSI parts and MSI hardware. You would expect at least MSI stuff to be compatible, but I didn't seem to be able to do it. The vertical mount bracket is a 3-slot bracket. This is a 3-slot card. If you did move it over slightly, which there is some adjustment to be able to move it over slightly, the card wouldn't line up with the slots and you wouldn't be able to fit the card to the actual bracket. So it didn't seem to work well for me. Maybe there is a way to do it, but it wasn't easy to figure out. In terms of thermal performance, so I ran the usual thermal performance tests with a combined Cinebench R23 and 3D Mark Speedway stress test running continuously in a loop for 30 minutes. With the system under full load, the MSI MEG Prospect 700R copes well with thermal demand. 77 degrees Delta is normal for the 13900K CPU, and the GPU temperature at 42 degrees is great for the 4080, which means the airflow is working well through the case. Removing the side panel didn't have much of an impact on either the CPU or GPU temperature, but removing the top and front mesh dropped CPU temperature by a couple of degrees. However, this was most likely due to the removal of the top dust filter, which can be restrictive and isn't necessarily needed when running the radiator at the top with the fan set as exhaust. Overall, the thermal performance is good in any scenario. In terms of the noise, with the CPU temperature of approximately 100 degrees C during stress tests, it means that the CPU fans will be running at 100% RPM, which means with this CPU cooler, noise output is high. With the case in its default configuration and all panels installed, noise output was measured at 51 decibels max. But with the system idle and running the case fans at 40% duty cycle, which was around 800 RPM, the system is very quiet. So during light load tasks, it won't be distracting at all. So in terms of the pros and cons of the MSI MEG or MSI MEG Prospect 700R, you've got plenty of space to work with in the case, so installing a high-end system is pretty easy. You won't run into any issues with compatibility in terms of running out of space, so space to the front for a long graphics card, things like that, no problem at all. There's plenty of space at the top of the case as well, so you can actually connect up things like the EPS power cables and fan headers with a AIO radiator and fans installed up there, which is good. The removable power supply shroud is very useful for cable management and fitting the power supply into the case. The power supply used is the Seasonic Prime TX1600, which is is a large power supply, approximately 210 millimeters long. That fits in the case perfectly. There's actually some stops on the floor of the case, and that goes right up to those stops. I can't imagine there'll be many people wanting to build a system in this case with a bigger power supply than that, so there's no issues there in terms of the power supply installation. Airflow seems good with the mesh panels. The stock fans that come with the case seem reasonably quiet. I had them running at 40% on the LCD touchscreen panel, which was around about 800 RPM, and they are virtually silent. The LCD screen, now that has some really useful features compared to other LCD screens I've seen on cases where you can just look at system information and put images and GIFs and things like that on the screens. This is by far a lot better than anything I've seen before, because you can use the LCD screen to control fan speed, so you can select the different ports. So there's port A, which has all 3 fans connected, port B, which has the rear fan connected, and then port C and D in this scenario weren't used because I connected the CPU fans. They were all connected up to the cooler. But you can adjust each port individually, so you can run the front fans at a different speed to rear fans if you wanted to, and you can adjust them between 20, 40, 60, 80 and 100%, which is a good range, and it allows you to tune the system to the preferred noise levels that you require. You can also adjust the RGB lighting on there, so there's technically no extra software necessary to run the RGB lighting. You can scroll through the various different effects, or you can just choose a static color and scroll through the various static colors on the LCD panel without the need for any extra software. But if you want to use some of the additional features, so you can have things like weather reports on there, you can put the time and a clock up on there, put custom images and GIFs and things like that up there. But to use those features, you have to install the MSI sensor software, which is okay, I guess, and it does give the screen those extra features. But the MSI sensor software, it can be a little temperamental at times. For instance, at one point I completely lost any control of the CPU cooler, and the CPU cooler is controlled solely by the MSI software, and for some point I completely lost all control. And I mean, even the main screen on the software just disappeared. A system restart fixed the problem, so it's not all bad, but it is a bit annoying if you've got to restart the system all the time if the software's playing up. But the LCD screen, I really like that. It is a really good feature. The only problem with it is a bit high up, and it's a bit odd, the position on that kind of slope. So if you've got the system on your desk and you're sat down, it's difficult to see it. The only way, and obviously if you can't see it, it's difficult to use the touchscreen features. The only way that you can see it all the time really is by having the system on the floor, so you're looking down at an angle to it, and that might not be how most people want to, you know, display the system. I know a lot of people these days like to have the system on the desk, so the positioning of the LCD screen isn't perfect, but overall it's a good case. Build quality is really good. The hinges on the doors, the action of those is really smooth. The thickness of the steel that it's made out of makes it feel very strong and sturdy. The powder coating finish looks nice, even, so it is a good quality case. These brushed aluminium panels, they look good. They give it kind of a wide stance and it looks quite aggressive. The only problem with those aluminium panels is they show up every single finger mark, and it's quite difficult to clean off. So the oil in your skin on brushed aluminium, it's quite difficult to clean off. It's not like you can just wipe it off easily. You will have to use some kind of solvent-based cleaner to clean it off, so everything shows up on those. Maybe it wasn't the best choice of material for those panels. So overall, it's a good case. The main issue I've got with it, obviously, is the price at £350. I'd probably compare the features of this case to something like a Corsair 5000D Airflow, or maybe a Fractal Meshify 2, or that style of case. And those are priced around about £150 in the UK. This is £350, so you're paying £200 for the 4.3-inch touchscreen LCD, and I'm not sure that's worth it. I don't think that feature alone is worth £200. But with the price aside, if money was no object and I had a huge budget for a system, it is a really good case. Those features of that touchscreen LCD, I do like those. Airflow, thermals are good. The amount of space you've got in the system is great for high-end gaming builds. The modular side panel makes it adaptable to different scenarios. So with price aside, it's a good case, but it is on the expensive side. So thanks for watching this review of the MSI MEG Prospect 700R. Let us know what you think of this case in the comment section. Is this something you'd buy for your next build? If you've enjoyed watching this video, don't forget to hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you've not already done so, and if you like what we do here at Kit Guru, you can always support us by heading over to the store and picking up some merch, or you could even subscribe to our Patreon. And as always, if you want to catch up on all the in-depth technical reviews, head over to the website.